Hello everyone, Hunter-Chidster here, and today I'm doing what I did with Bloodborne, and I'm ranking all the Dark Souls bosses from worst to best. This is a game that has many highs and many lows with its boss roster. I absolutely love this game as I will play the other two Dark Souls games in the future, so enjoy the video. Shockingly at dead last on this list is the Centipede Demon located at the end of the Demon Ruins. This boss and the one after it are the lowest points of the second half of the game for me. The problem with this boss is not the boss itself, but the arena in conjunction with its attacks. This lava area is easily one of the worst in the franchise, as the lack of room is very noticeable. Also, Centipede Demon will oh, also spam its unreaching attacks with its arm, and sometimes refuse to get near you. It also doesn't help that the camera is constantly in your face when walking onto it. The reason that this boss sours me is because that it will constantly annoy you as much as possible with its wide spanning attacks, and it will constantly abuse the lava to its advantage. The fact that it drops the orange charred ring if defeated or when its arm/tail are cut makes it mandatory on blind playthroughs. One question, why is this boss returned to Elden Ring Night Rain? Speaking of awful demon fights, the Capra Demon is another boss that is mostly ruined by its arena. This Go-like demon is located at the end of the lower Undead Berg, and is infamously known to be a painful boss to overcome. First of all, not only is its arena very small, but there are also two dogs that will limit your movement when fighting it. This can lead to lots of frustration as you can easily get killed the moment you enter through the fog wall. Once the dogs are dead, the Capra Demon has a simple moveset to compensate for the size of its arena. Its run back is somewhat of an issue as well because you will get swarmed by bandits and dogs before and maybe after the fight. It doesn't help that if you didn't get the master key in the beginning of the game, you will most likely have to fight it in order to get to Blighttown. This boss was solely designed to frustrate the player as much as possible, which is a very bad sign considering how early it is fought in the game. Oh, Bed of Chaos, the so-called worst boss in all of Soulsborne. This boss is infamously known to be part that severely damages this game's quality. It is fought at the end of Lost Islev, as will most likely be the last Lord Soul boss people will fight, and for good reason too. Just like the other two bosses mentioned, the Bed of Chaos will constantly annoy you from start to finish. It will start using sweeping attacks, which are simple to dodge, since all you need to do is stay away from it. However, after you destroy one of its cores, that's where all the frustration begins. Not only will there be a fiery beam that will attack you, but the floor also breaks apart as you progress through the fight. The sweeping attacks can easily knock you into the many pits in the area for instant death. This combined with its annoying runback makes it a gauntlet before the end of the game. Then there is also the Chaos Storm that will use after both cores are destroyed, which does insane amounts of damage. Finally, you have to make one last jump to the center in order to end the fight with just a single attack. Even when you make the jump, you still aren't safe as the Chaos Storm can still hit you, even at the end. This boss was rushed development at its worst, since it's a shame that lore is connected to the Witch of Isla on how she wanted to create a second flame, but corrupted herself into the Bed of Light, which serves as a source of all the demons throughout the series. Also, the one positive thing about this boss is that it is the only boss fight in Soulsborne where your progress saves, so I'm glad FromSoftware knew how bad this boss fight will be. From a spectacle point of view, the Moonlight Butterfly would be very appealing to look at. However, It is really boring and sometimes annoying to fight against. It is fought in the beginning of Darkroot Garden, as it is fought on top of the bridge. The butterfly will constantly be spamming magic projectiles while attacking out of range as it can fire orbs, laser beams, and small mini projectiles. The only attack time to get damage without range attacks is when it lands on the bridge, which will leave it vulnerable to massive amounts of damage. Then it will create an explosion around it to fly back and repeat the process. This feels like a massive endurance test because it tests how patient the player can be. If you don't have magic resistance or high health, this fight can easily give you massive headaches. Here I thought one reskin of a boss was enough, but two in the same game is insane. To say the Demon Fire Stage is an upgrade to the Stray Demon will never cross my mind, as it's in a more cramped arena than Stray Demon. It is also much more aggressive in an area that has branches that you can get stuck on, while being in one of the worst areas in the game. I think this boss fight gets lots of hate, and for good reason too. I don't hate Fire Stage as much as people do, but when you're the second reskin of the first boss, while in a worse arena than the first reskin, there isn't much for you to offer. Especially since its moveset is the exact same as the Stray Demons. If only was in a better area, it would have been superior to the Stray Demon. And now for the last of the Demon Runes bosses, Ceaseless Discharge. This giant was the first demon to ever exist and is very tragic. His boss fight is very simple as you only need to dodge his easily telegraphed attacks and counterattack his arm and tentacles. Although he has insane damage output, he is still a really easy boss unless you counter him early. He does have his fire laser, which is really hard to dodge and is nearly impossible to dodge if you're far away from him. Unless you hit him with any projectile, he won't attack you immediately, but taking his daughter's gear causes him to go on a frenzy as he'll literally rip his left arm from his chest to stop you. Plus, there's the cheese method where you can run back to the fog wall and wait for him to lunge at you. This results in an instant win as he will completely be defenseless and will fall to his death when his hand takes enough damage. Despite how tragic a Ceaseless Discharge is, he is still very simple, and it's surprising how his name refers to the unending relief of load. If you were to tell me which boss had the most wasted potential, I would say that would go to the next Lord Soul boss, Seath the Scaleless. This dragon is infamously known to be the dragon that betrayed his own kin during the Age of Fire as he assisted Gwen with defeating his brethren as seen in the intro. He was granted the status of dukedom as he created his own archive to experiment on people. Seath has a good build-up because he forcibly kills the player in order to progress through his archives. Then we encounter him again in the Crystal Cave, where the primordial crystal is found, which has in granting Seath the immortality that he was looking for. Once the crystal is destroyed, Seath is finally vulnerable to damage. His attack with his Crystal Breath, which inflicts both magic and curse damage, can be very devastating. Seath will also use Claw Swipes and Giant AoE. The part that really hurt his placement was the fact that cutting his back tail, the very back one, grants the Moonlight a great sword. This weapon can be frustrating to consider how much Seath uses his tail slams, like as if it was designed to stop you from doing that. Plus his run-back warrior to go through the entire Crystal Cave can be painful as well. Seath's lore and build-up were better than his fight overall. It's a shame because he was hyped up in the opening to be a very fearsome dragon fight compared to what we had. Next up is a boss that has good traits but has a somewhat awful execution, that being Grave Lord Nito. He is fought at the end of the Tomb of the Giants, which is my least favorite area in the game. Before the fight even begins, you are forced to take fall damage when you enter the fog wall, which already sucks. Nito will slowly approach the player while 3 skeleton minions aid him in battle. These skeletons are somewhat responsible for causing frustration during his fight, as they cannot be killed permanently unless you have a divine weapon. The area is also somewhat cramped as there are also big skeletons around Nito's camp, which can make this fight more hellish than it needs to be. Nito himself has a fun moveset, however, which he can also friendly fire his own minions. He also has a miasma AoE attack, which can create some moment of relief if avoided, since it can also wipe his minions. This boss can also be seen lower because he has by far the worst runback in the game, easily. We had to basically traverse the entirety of the Tomb of the Giants. It's a shame because you can also interact with him through his covenant, and this is somewhat of an underwhelming boss. Luckily, he will be the last boss on this list that I have some disdain towards as we move on to my next pick. Oh, Pinwheel. I could not forget how this boss was constantly memed as the hardest boss, even I did it myself. He is fought at the end of the Catacombs, and is widely regarded as not just the easiest boss in the game, but one of the easiest bosses in Soulsborne as a whole. Pinwheel mainly acts as a mage, as he can summon clones and use pyromancy against the player. He is designed to be an early game boss, but the Catacombs were not an early game. They were meant for the mid to late game. The run back through the Bonewheel Skeleton Den can be somewhat brutal, but Pinwheel is so easy that it's unlikely you die to him unless you fight him early. Pinwheel's lore is also very tragic, as he was trying to resurrect his family with the use of necromancy before the Chosen Undead stopped him from doing so. Pinwheel's easy difficulty was for the better because the Catacombs were one of the most annoying areas to traverse in the game. I think Pinwheel designed to be a pain, and I appreciate his right of killing to make later runs more fun. For the first reskin boss in Soulsborne, the story left somewhat of an impression on me. It was fought during the visit to the Undead Asylum. It could be seen at the very beginning of the game. Also, it failed to succeed the Asylum Demon, but it still was a somewhat thrilling encounter, as entering the arena felt really cool, coming through the floor. Its attacks are mostly the same as the Asylum Demon, but with a few changes. It can now summon an explosion in front of it, as well as when it digs his callus into the ground to cause an explosion. I have seen this boss get some hate because of how easy it is to get into an infinite loop, or how its area is somewhat cramped. As I mentioned already, I don't know why the Demon Biostage was created when Stray Demon already exists. The Stray Demon is not the best reskin to exist, but it was still a fun fight if you don't get killed at the beginning of the fight, of course. Next up is everyone's favorite femboy in Soulsborne, Dark Sun Gwendolyn. He's widely regarded as Gwyn's lastborn, who guards his tomb in Anor Londo. Gwendolyn also has a covenant, Blade of the Darkmoon, if you meet him with a trick hearing his wrath.
Thou that tarnishest the Godmother's image, I am Gwendolyn, and thy transgression shall not go unpunished. Thou shalt perish in the twilight of Anor Londo.
When you do fight him, he is standing in an endless hallway where the gimmick is to chase him across the hallway until he's defeated. He will launch small arrows which home in on the player, large ones which will go through the pillars in the arena, and can fire arrows from his bow. This can be a long fight if you don't keep rushing him down, as he will always teleport away if you get close to him. Although Gwendolyn may be one of the easiest bosses in the game, his damage output should not be underestimated.
Oh, heretic, swathed in dark, an eternal curse upon thee.
Prosperi Priscilla is another gimmick boss that is okay at best. She is fought at the end of the painted world of Ariamis, which is one of my favorite areas in the game. Priscilla is one of the only two bosses in which you can leave their boss arena whenever you like to, with the other being Seed in the first encounter. She kinda demands the player to plunge down the plank to avoid any harm, but if you attack her, she will fight you with her life on scythe. Her gimmick of invisibility is nothing new to me because I did fight the Witches of Hemwick prior to this. It is easy to detect her by looking at the footprints she leaves behind the snow as she approaches you. Her attacks are very easy to dodge as well, as they have a mostly large windup, but they can inflict bleed damage if they connect. Once you damage her enough times, you will be able to see her clear and can probably fight her head on. She can go invisible again through her ice breath, but she's easy just like Gwendolyn. It's insane to me how she got imprisoned here, all because of her life from Scythe. Next up is the Iron Golem, who guards the city of Orlando. This spot at the top of Sen's fortress has largely based on a tower knife from Demon Souls. The golem basically serves as the last obstacle before reaching one of the best areas in the game. Its size does look imposing at first glance, as its axe can cause heavy amounts of damage. Luckily, the strategy of running between its legs will evade most of its attacks. Plus, attacking those legs at up times can make it stagger to the point where it can fall off and be vulnerable to attacks, or just fall off the arena entirely for an instant win. The only threats to this fight are gravity from the narrow arena, and its grab tag, which has a chance for the golem to throw you off the arena for an instant death. It also has a wind projectile, but it's mostly useless other than providing a range on for the golem. The golem can occasionally stomp with its feet, but it is very easy to predict his attacks. Basically, defeating the golem felt very satisfying for when seeing the climax of the first half of the game. Next up is my early game arch nemesis, the Bell Gargoyles. This gargoyle duo is found on the rooftops of the Undead Parish, and they absolutely destroyed me on my first playthrough. This fight starts off with one gargoyle with a simple moveset with his halberd and tail axe. It is really simple to deal with it, as the only real concern is the gravity from the arena. This all changes when the second gargoyle appears when the other reaches half health. The difficulty spikes up immensely the moment the second gargoyle appears, as they can easily overwhelm you with combined assaults and fire breaths. Coming from Bloodborne, I was not struggling with gang fights in that game, but these gargoyles show me how brutal the gang fights were back then in Dark Souls. Luckily, this boss fight is a massive hurdle to overcome for being fought early. The gargoyles made me realize how much I struggled when getting jumped by multiple enemies. They also made me more used to gang jumps, as, well, playing Dark Souls 2 will make me experience it throughout the entire game. Now it's time for the very first Soulsborne DLC boss, the Sanctuary Guardian. This monstrous hybrid kicks off the DLC in a very aggressive manner. It is designed to teach the player that the DLC will go at a much faster pace compared to the base game. Its attacks consist of lightning projectiles, claw/headbutt attacks, wind blasts, and even its poison tail. Sanctuary Guard is largely overshadowed by the other DLC bosses that come after it. This boss feels like a bit too aggressive for being the first DLC boss in the game. Its moveset can also give strength users massive headaches due to the speed of its attacks. Defeating it does grant you the ability to explode the DLC, but its soul is by far the most useless boss soul in the game. Even though it's the weakest of the DLC bosses, it is far from a bad fight, as it was really good kill to see the best boss in the game afterwards. Just missing out on the top 10 is the Taurus Demon, who's found at the midpoint of the Undead Burg. This Minotaur was one of the first obstacles I had to fight against in the game. It serves as the first proper boss I need to kill on most playthroughs. Its moveset is a basic learn curve for the type of combat present of the game. The Taurus team also introduces the player into becoming familiar with unusual boss routes as it takes place on a bridge. There are also archers on the top tower as well, but I recommend taking them out early before the Taurus team appears. Even though it is possible to perform a plunger attack on the demon, and still jump up to the tower that you're standing on. Overall, I think the Taurus team was a decent boss for introducing the combat system. Kicking off the top 10 is the tutorial boss, the Silent Demon. This iconic demon is widely regarded as one of the best first bosses in not just Soulsborne, but in video games as a whole. It was so popular that it was reskinned twice in the Stray Demon and Demon Fire, who I already mentioned. The demon also managed to inspire all of the Erdtree and Pizza Tree avatars in Elden Ring. The moment you are greeted by this demon, the first instinct is to run away because you are most likely unable to kill it. Although on repeat playthroughs, you can decide whether you want to hit the iconic plunge attack. Fighting it without the plunge attack, however, was very fun as its moveset was much better than its reskins. Despite the Silent Demon being the first boss, it really made me more excited to start this amazing game. I know this may be a little biased, but at number 9 is the Gaping Dragon found at the end of the depths. This was the very first dragon fight that I ever fought in Soulsborne, and it was not what I expected. How was I supposed to expect this malformed dragon at the end of a sewer area, considering how early this fought in the game? It made me feel insane at first, but in reality, the Gaping Dragon is actually pretty easy for a dragon fight. It has stomps, claw attacks, tail swipes, jump attacks, and his famous charge attack. This one charge attack is an almost insta-kill if you're caught in it, but it comes out very slow and you can even hit its head for extra damage. It also has a vomit attack which can break the durability of your weapon if caught in it, which is very dangerous. The Gaping Dragon is the kind of boss that can easily punish greedy players because of his high damage output. I love how this dragon was one of the few that survived the Age of Fire and is somehow at the end of a sewer level. Say what you will about the Gaping Dragon, but it was a very fun boss to fight. Just like the Gaping Dragon, Chaos Witch Quelaag was another boss from the first half that I enjoyed fighting against. She fought at the end of the infamous Blighttown, and she's responsible for crazy amounts of fan art for this game. As for her boss fights, she has a very fun moveset with a variety of sword swipes, spider-leg stomps, and a lava spew. Quelaag is the kind of boss that teaches the player about spatial awareness, because just because she misses her lava attacks doesn't mean that she isn't dangerous. Even greedy players would dare not to come near her AoE attack. Quelaag is another treasure figure as the only reason why she fights us is to protect her sister. Quelaag may be a villain in our eyes, but she has every reason to fight us as she proves to be one of the best bosses in the base game. It is also very satisfying to finally be able to leave the dreadful Blighttown. Next up is the final boss of the game, Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. The entire Dark Souls trilogy revolved around him, as he was basically the reason why the events in the games even happened. The Dark Souls hyped him up as a major antagonist and a major threat to the world when he was shown in the intro. In the end, he's found as a shell of his former self after killing the first flame. The music that plays during his boss fight has become so iconic for showing the downward spiral of Gwyn, as all of his deeds to prolong the Age of Fire were done because of his fear of the dark. The fight itself shows how mindless he has become as he strikes with aggressiveness and speed. Luckily, he is the only boss in the game that can be paired, which feels somewhat necessary due to the speed of his attacks and unforgiving AI. Gwyn may have been considered the most evil Soulsborne character to many, but he did all this because he didn't want darkness to consume everything. It's a shame that he plunged the entire world into his image because of said fear, and has made a lasting impression on Dark Souls as a whole. Just missing out on the top 5 is the last of the Lord Soul bosses, the 4 Kings of New Londo. This quartet of Abyssal Fingers is in my opinion the most underrated boss in the game. They can only be fought in the Abyss when having the Covenant of Artorias equipped. Just fighting a boss in an area filled with darkness is already cool enough, especially when you are standing on nothing. As for the fight itself, the 4 Kings may have many sword attacks, magic blasts, and AoEs, as well as grab that can steal your humanity. The Kings fight one by one, as the main focus on this fight is to take them out as quickly as possible, because they can easily overwhelm the player. It can get to the point where they can start attacking out of sync from each other if taking too long. Their sword attacks also have a tipper effect, as the closer you are to them, the less damage you will take. This can lead to a massive slugfest of who can kill each other the fastest, and is also the reason why this boss is underrated. Usually I don't like gang fights, but the 4 Kings are one of the exceptions, and they are very underrated for being part of the second half. Where do I start with this iconic duo that introduced the greatness of Soulsborne difficulty? Ornstein and Smough were once again the greatest boss in FromSoftware during the early years. They also were one of the few bosses that showed how to make a good gang fight, which many others failed to do. Ornstein is more known to be the smaller fast boss with his signature speed, even though his AI is janky. Then there is Smough, the slow but powerful boss with a giant hammer. These two are the only bosses in the game to have a second phase, as they introduce his concept for FromSoftware. This depends on if you kill Smough first. or if you kill Ornstein first. No matter whose super form you fight, they will be both giant and capable of dealing lightning damage. This is the fight that really showed difficulty and satisfaction that FromSoftware games are known for. Ever since Dark Souls, FromSoftware have become very popular thanks to this duo. Just missing out on the podium is one of the best dragon fights in Soulsborne, Black Dragon Calamite. Many dragons in the games lack one important feature that makes a good dragon fight. That is having a good ground moveset, which Calamite has managed to do. His build-up was very good because he most likely ambushed you early in the DLC, and you were forced to die to him before asking Hawkeye Goth for help on fighting him. Calamite still managed to put up a fight even in a weakened state. He is, in my opinion, the toughest of the DLC bosses because of the fear of his grab attack that will make you take double damage from his attacks. There's also the sheer amount of bite attacks and flame breath attacks that will be used at very high speeds. Calamite was so good that he started a trend of amazing DLC dragons in Soulsborne DLCs, with Sin from Dark Souls 2, Medea from Dark Souls 3, and Bale from Elden Ring. This was one of my favorite dragon fights in Soulsborne that still hold up to this day. Taking the bronze belt is, in my opinion, the most tragic character in the game, Great Grey Wolf Sif. There's a lot of lore about this dog, and it's quite sad for such a boss. Sif was known as Artorias' pet who accompanied him in stopping the spread of the abyss from Manus. Unfortunately, she was left defenseless in the chasm until the chosen undead saved her. She even can recognize who saved her from the same person who saved her from the alternate cutscene. It's a shame that we have to kill her in order to fight the Four Kings. All Sif wanted to do was protect her owner's grave so nobody can share the same fate as her owner. Even if she's not the hardest fight in the game, it still feels wrong to kill someone that we save. This is the only boss in the game that I didn't want to kill in every playthrough, but unfortunately, there are no happy endings in a game like Dark Souls. taking the runner position is the final boss of the DLC, Manus, Father of the Abyss. If there was a boss fight other than Calamy and Ornstein Smoke that had me shook, it would be this abyssal beast. After all, he was the one who defeated Artorias and was the boss that inspired Bloodborne's boss, some of the Bloodborne's bosses like the Claire Beast and Once of Vidgar, as well as the Demon of Hatred from Sekiro. As for his fight, he is very aggressive for his beastly appearance, as he'll do many types of hand combos to overwhelm you. He also uses Catalyst to cast Dark Magic, which can cause insane amounts of damage in forms of Dark Rain, a Dark Bee Ring, and a string of Dark Orbs. Plus, Manus was the one responsible for bringing to DLC to begin with, which makes for an amazing build-up. I am aware that you can use the Silver Pendant to negate his Dark Magic attacks, but I don't even use it to begin with, because I didn't even know it existed, but I just didn't use it. Manus was a very good final boss for such an amazing DLC, and he really was the blueprint for Beast Boss in the Bloodborne. He is difficult, but in an honest way, and he is easily one of the best bosses in the game. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Knight Artorias is my favorite boss in the game. He's basically everything I wanted for a Dark Souls boss. Artorias has tons of lore surrounding him, as he is widely regarded as the Abyss Walker. Many characters in the base game remember his legacy, and now he became such a legend. He was one of Gwyn's 4 knights alongside Ornstein, Kieran, and Hawkeye Goth. Artorias and his dog Sif were tasked with preventing the spread of the Abyss by Manus. However, they were defeated by the beast and were forced to retreat, as Artorias was left crippled in the process. He used all of his strength to form a barrier around Sif as he left her behind. When we find him in the DLC, he is slowly being corrupted by the Abyss and is slowly losing his sanity. This means that we have to put him down before he causes any more harm, even if it means that we are killing a legend. Artorias fights mostly in the same way that the player does. He is aggressive, but not overwhelming, as he'll be doing acrobatic flips to cover large amounts of distance. Plus, he can power himself up by consuming the abyss around him, which will increase his damage output. Luckily, it is possible to stop him from breaking his poise when he starts to power up. The way that the combat system in this game makes this boss fight more special is amazing. Artorias will always remain a legend to this day, even as other Souls games overshadow him. Well, farewell Artorias, you will always be remembered for your legacy. And that's it. I really love Dark Souls, even if the second half really dropped off in quality. As I said earlier, this game is a mixed bag in terms of quality. I also realized that this is the only Souls game with no bad DLC bosses whatsoever, which is a really good thing. Anyway, that's all I got today, and the end.